Good morning, Amyr.
Good morning, Simon. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Amyr. Very well indeed.
Good.
So, do you want to kick off and introduce our subject for today, or would you like
Absolutely. Well, we've decided to touch upon a subject that I think you'll agree, Simon, is more and more coming into the public awareness, especially when it comes to the financial pages of newspapers and even mainstream news, and that is ESG. Now, just to break this down for our listeners, ESG, of course, stands for environmental, social, and governance factors. And what we're seeing more and more of in the public domain is a lot of signal and a lot of noise around whether this ESG is something investors need to be mindful of and really need to be implementing in their own portfolios. Now,
is it a fad? Is it, what's involved here? And what we wanted to do was to put some little bit of context to the academia that surrounds the investment portfolios that we use. Sorry,
absolutely. No, not at all. And I think I was just going to trampoline on what you've just said there, Simon, because it's absolutely right. We're only too conscious in our investment committee in our firm that we want to have our ears to the ground and know about and understand what's going out and happening out there in the investment world. If there's any new investment research or any science that is interesting for us to bring into our investment proposition. But we do that in a way that we're mindful of protecting our clients, our prospective clients, and our own portfolios against these fads, against the noise that is out there too. So Simon, you really kindly put together a few slides that actually might approach and show our listeners how we approach ESG, perhaps in a way that they haven't really thought about themselves.
So let me share those just for a moment. Let's just go back to the start. So this is the first slide for today. And what we just wanted to do was give this a little bit of context, really, because people talk about greenhouse gases. Now, there are 4 main greenhouse gases. There are an extra 3. But in essence, what we need to do is to reduce these down to 0. And various bits of government legislation have been introduced, net zero. Just to read from the slide very briefly, 2019, the government amended the previous act that, in other words, has stipulated that we will reduce carbon emissions down to 0 by 2050. Now, clearly, this is a journey that we all need to go on. This isn't suddenly wait till 2049 and then suddenly turn off all the carbon. We all know it doesn't work like that. So it's a journey that we will all need to go on to embrace this. And what I've simply done here is added maybe just a few thoughts, my own perspective, as to how this transition or how this journey is going to happen. Because let me be honest about this. I'm no eco-warrior. I'm not a crusty, but this is now mainstream, and the basic statistics work out so that we all now need to contribute, so that there is a 7% reduction each and every year in carbon emissions. Now, just by way of an example, and this is just sort of my own personal thoughts, I used to own a diesel car. I bought the diesel car because CO2 emissions were low, and frankly, the tax was very low on it. Now, when that car came up for renewal, I haven't leapt in and bought a Tesla, simply because at the moment, I don't think the infrastructure is quite there. So I bought an efficient petrol engine car, but the next car I buy, I fully understand it will be almost certainly a hybrid or an electric. And the same when it comes to my heating. I've got gas heating in the house. I'm not about to rip it out. I'm not about to install electric. When the boiler goes, and I've got a fairly aged boiler, I will replace it with a gas boiler, I imagine, but I'll make sure that it's hydrogen compliant. And so I think this is just, to keep using the same expression, it is a journey. So having Australian family, I can't say that we will no longer fly, but we will try to fly a little bit less. We will try to cycle and walk more. We want to, we're not about to go vegan, but we will reduce the amount of meat we eat, and it will be locally sourced, try and go more seasonable on the veggies, and cut out single-use plastic. And a statistic I heard the other day, which isn't on the slide, but I thought it was fascinating, which is 79% of all plastic ever made is currently landfill, and only 7% has ever been recycled.
Gosh.
The balance being stuff we continue to use, because plastic still is a very useful product, but it's this single-use plastic that we've got to get rid of. So this was really just to try and put context from my own perspective.
Yeah. And I love that, Simon, because our viewers will be able to follow that slide and just impose on it their own journey. Some of our viewers will have already gone full electric car. Some of our viewers don't own a car at all and just cycle everywhere. And they try to keep their shopping and their consuming habits fairly local to their area. So it is a journey. We're on that journey. And I think in whichever way that our viewers take this, we are heading towards a place where everyone is more conscious about the impact we have on the environment. Everyone's more conscious about some of the social impact that the goods and services we buy have on other people and on the world. And also, we are very much aware of the fact that we can incentivize companies to behave a bit better when it comes to our vote as shareholders on their governance and how that governance influences their board, their management team, the executive pay, and everything else.
Exactly. So let me just scroll over to what is effectively the last slide, which really just outlines this ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And you see how I put environmental, social, and governance into green here. So I've fully embraced the spirit of the PowerPoint. But absolutely, as you were saying, the governance which comes last is arguably the most important, because governance is heavily dictates that all of our portfolios, because we effectively have two sets of portfolios. We have the ones that I'll effectively call the normal portfolios, but we also have some specific ESG portfolios that include exclusions for various reasons. Now, we're not going to go into that for today. That's too large a subject. But today, we're just going to concentrate on the bottom one, which is the governance. In other words, how a company is managed, how it's run.
Absolutely.
So let me just slide down.
And also, Simon, really importantly, Simon, how the way a company applies governance framework to their doing of whatever they do, how that directly influences their actual share price, and also the ability for them to jump on opportunities to be able to progress and improve and actually deliver more growth and more dividends. I mean, let's just look at the other side of this argument really quickly, okay? Let's think of some recent poor corporate governance practices that have stood out for all of us. You mentioned before you used to own a diesel car. Well, it wasn't that long ago that we all became aware of Volkswagen's emission scandal. Yeah. And that scandal directly impacted its share price. Again, it wasn't too long ago that we all became aware of Facebook's misuse of data. That's poor corporate governance in play, which directly affects us as small shareholders in Facebook through a fund that invests in many, many thousands of companies.
Indeed, yeah.
So being mindful of governance, and also through our investment partners who are institutional investors, incentivizing them to be mindful of governance when they go to the AGM and they have a vote, I think directly impacts the way a company deals with its internal remuneration structure, executive structure, internal risks. And a good governed company typically is smarter about going forward on opportunities that will allow them to generate further dividends and further growth.
Indeed, because it's an interesting subject, because you can either say disinvestment, we will not invest in this company, which you could argue will drive up the cost of capital, but also by disinvesting, what you're doing is giving up your vote as a shareholder. And by giving up your vote as a shareholder, you no longer have the ability to question everything from executive pay to the makeup of the board, how they operate, their socially conscious approach to the business they're in, and so governance involves, as I say, all of our portfolios, and the fund managers we use are particularly active on this front. And I was reading a statistic from just last year that said there were 640 engagements with the companies. Roughly a third of those were to do with the E and the S, and 2/3 of those engagements with those companies as larger shareholders was to do with the governance. They sent out nearly 600 letters. There was global proxy voting in over 14,000 meetings. 133,000 proposals voted on. So they're very active in understanding that it's the governance and those that manage the company directly drives, and this is, I suppose, reiterating what you've said, the success and the profits of those companies.
Absolutely. And, I think we can summarize this fairly simply to our viewers that have stayed with us up until this point.
Yeah.
ESG is not a product, and don't let anybody let you think that it is a product, right? It's a way of thinking about investing and employing your investable capital into companies and into efforts in society that will bring back some greater good, however you, the viewer, measures that. We, as a financial planning and wealth management company, are only too conscious of the fact that this is something that is more and more becoming important in the public domain. And we've already taken steps to ensure that all our investment partners are very, very conscious of the G in ESG across all of their portfolios, which we use. Now, of course, some clients want to go ahead one step further, and they're not only interested on the governance of a company and making sure that that is up to par, but they're also interested in excluding companies that are bad for the environment or that go against their own personal beliefs. Well, that's a separate conversation. As my colleague Simon said, that's something that a conversation that we'd be happy to have with you. If you wanted to call us and discuss that further, no worries. But the most important thing is don't treat ESG as a product, and be very mindful of G, even if you are not investing in an ESG way, as the press or as the financial papers would have you think it.
Yeah, I think that's a wrap, Amyr.
Fantastic.
And we'll call
Always
it a
good
day.
to speak with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Simon. Bye for now.
Bye now.